Hey everyone, I hope you've had a great day so far and that you're doing well. For this video, we'll be going through an unboxing and review of Voyager class Rhinox. And this particular version of Rhinox is from the Transformers War for Cybertron Trilogy, specifically Kingdom, although he is a pretty much huge homage slash copy of his original Transformers Beast Wars incarnation back from the 90s. So closing the gap on the remaining Maximals of Season 1, with Rhinox now hitting the video line. There will definitely be the one left to go, although obviously it could still be argued, is he really a Maximal or not, because packaging suggests he's not, but semantics. Yes, Rhinox for this week, and the following week we'll look at the last Maximal, and that'll be Dinobot, which will pretty much cover my Season 1 Beast Wars cast. Anyway, here we have Rhinox. So there is a shot of Rhinox through the plastic window in his robot mode, sporting his very nice color palette of the greens, the golds, and the browns. Standard shot of his beast mode on the front of the box, as well as a shot of his robot mode on the side. So far I've been quite pleasantly, I won't say surprised, but I've been very satisfied with how the Maximals and Predacons from the Kingdom series have been in terms of their nostalgia value. That's the front of the box. I was going to say side, but I'm not looking at the side. The back of the box. Rhinox in his robot mode, beast mode, 35 steps, so this will be interesting. Partly why Rhinox has been left towards the end, as well as Dinobot, because they're at least 30 steps each. But that's okay. I'm sure we will manage. And interestingly, his little hieroglyph is cave painting, whatever, is the silhouette of a rhino. Not too unsurprising, really. So that was the back. So that's a look at the outside exterior of the box. That being done, time to open up and have a better look at Rhinox, his accessories, and get to some of the nitty gritty. And with Rhinox now out of the box. So what did we get? Usual manual, which I'm sure I'm going to be using quite a lot of later. Rhinox himself, who is surprisingly quite bulky when taken out of the box, which is good. Definitely a huge far cry from his original toy back in the 90s. We have two weapon accessories of his huge Gatling guns. I will comment about those later on. And then we have the interesting little foil card. So here we have, on the front, we have Megatron. And I'm sure if I was to peel this back, it will probably be Galvatron. Yes, here you go. Good old Galvatron. So yes, it's actually nice that I finally realized the little gimmick about these little card things while I still had a few left. So there we go. So the Megatron card will have Galvatron below. We've seen the Arc, we've seen Black Arachnia. Apparently there's a fourth card, which I feel like I've seen. I have to double check if I've actually got it. Might have to do a retrospective video of some description on that. But anyway, that is the included card. Megatron. At least for Rhinox anyway. Accessories we will come back to later on. Rhinox we will come back to later on as well. Standard manual. So Rhinox actually will have the ability to store his weapons often off his back, on his back, somewhere around the back, which isn't too bad. Otherwise, they can both be handheld. In terms of transformation steps, so these are the first 18. First few aren't too bad, so the first 4 about his hands, which actually seems pretty on par with his animated version. 5 to 7, it's just tidying up his chest. So surprisingly, it's not too bad. Step 15, we'll start looking at his legs, which I suspect is going to be some of the more challenging parts of the transformation. I mean, especially looking at step 18. And if I go over, yes, it's all legs everywhere. So that will definitely be interesting to see how that goes. I'm hoping there's some tabbing. Now, interestingly enough, step 29 suggests that 2 weapon halves can come together and store inside a Rhinox. I like how Rhinox actually has some weapon storage, unlike others, and his makes the least amount of sense, but weapon storage is still good. And there, hopefully with a bit of tabbing, everything will come together nicely, and that is his beast mode. So I'll definitely be clinging onto this later on. So Rhinox, before we start looking at you too much, so you do get 2 of your railguns. Now from the front end, they look fantastic. From the back end, not so much. Yeah, it's just unfortunate that they don't actually have more of a actual back area to actually give it a bit more heft. Of course, there's probably a third-party upgrade kit to give the guns a bit more body. But yes, it's unfortunate. His original toy had some decent body on his guns, and I think so have later iterations of his toy as well, so unfortunate, but at least the front looks pretty much intact. So if I had to put these into his hands like so. So from the front they don't look too bad, but as soon as you look at it from the side you do realise, oh, it's the body of the gun is not very body-like. Now, according to the instructions, he can also store these on his back. So I'll leave that one there for the moment. And I believe the idea was to... Was it there or was it somewhere else? Allegedly it's there. Hold on. I will reconfer with the book. Yes, apparently that is exactly how it is. So there'll just be a little porthole there, and you just put the handle in that. So it's not the most elegant store location, but compared to some of the others where it's been completely absent, this is a blessing. But yes, it's really up to you whether you store it or not. To be honest, I'd probably be more worthwhile putting him in a nice dynamic pose and holding them. So that is his accessories, which I can confirm are held quite well in his hands. So those two, probably won't see much of them for the rest of the video, but it's definitely nice that from the front end they have the very iconic look. It's just unfortunate that from the body of the weapon it's short, unfortunately. But the detailing is still nice. So we have those two. Now, on to the fun part. Rhinox. So here we have Rhinox from the front, from the side, from the back, other side, a bit of a angle and a nice close-up on his head and torso. Definitely some very nice detailing there. His chest has also got some very nice detailing. Now, will he have a Maximal logo somewhere? Maybe, maybe not. Apparently not, but I guess that's okay. In terms of colours, so he is sporting that very nice green that he always has, and it's definitely quite pleasant on the eye. Bit of silvery colour for his teeth, I dare say. Oh, his Rhino's teeth. Some of this gold application through bits of the waist, the chest, bits of his head and his shoulder areas, and then the rest of his color tones, for the most part, is the skin color on his beast mode, which I believe, I want to say some type of brown, but maybe I am wrong. Looks more like a grey, to be honest. As for other color apps, he's got a bit of black and some skin tone color for his toes, rhino horn, and things like that. So color wise, I would say Rhinox is quite accurate, which is really cool. Now, articulation. Well, before I go into articulation, will you stand on your own 2 feet? Yes, you will. I feel like you need to move things a bit more, but I guess we will find out in time how much moving you can do. But yes, you can definitely stand on your own 2 feet. That's us looking down on you. That's not too bad. Now, articulation. The head. So the head can definitely do a nice 360, and unlike some of the previous figures, it does have some head tilt, so it can definitely pan up, pan back down to his normal look. So definitely quite handy if you want to do a side-to-side pan tilt as well. So very, very cool. Definitely wish some of the other figures that we've looked at had a bit more of that head tilt as well, because that would have made things so much cooler. So that's that. So good amount of articulation there. In terms of the arms, so your arm will do a nice full 360 at the joint itself, given that you are not encumbered by anything. Your arm can go all the way out like that, because of some of the hinging that's in there, which I guess is good and weird at the same time, because you have this large section just staying there, but that's not too bad. You do actually surprisingly have some of this retraction and whatever the opposite of retraction is, forward movement in the shoulder area as well, which I think is really, really cool. So definitely a lot of articulation support in Rhinox's arms that we haven't seen in some of the previous figures thus far. Now, because I did do the 360 earlier, so his arm will forward, back, as per the 360. He does have a 90-degree elbow there, which is cool. And I do believe it can also spin, so if that does what I think it does, there will be some level of spinning, and Rhinox deciding to kick the stand. Definitely be careful, because as I was doing that, I did feel there was a little bit of resistance in some of the spinning, so if you are to spin that around, I would probably recommend holding it up here and holding it down there. So that is that. So definitely some nice articulation there. Is there anything else? The hand will not move. So definitely overall the arms are quite impressive in terms of articulation and general movement around. Rhinox does have a little bit of kibbling that doesn't necessarily really tap into position. I mean, it's a singular piece, so it does seem to stay in place fairly well. But yes, if you do hold him from the back, just bear in mind you will probably move this ever so slightly. Now I'll just do that. Do we have anything in the torso? I have a little bit of movement in the torso. Not too much, because we do start whacking a few things into each other. That's definitely not too bad. Definitely a bit of side to side, which is good. As for the legs, can't do a full split on account of the exterior Rhino armor on the thighs, just unfortunately impacting parts of the main torso area. But that's okay. Rhinox never really struck me as being an overly agile robot anyway. It's definitely good that he still can do at least that much of a split. As for the legs, so leg can definitely go pretty much all the way to the back. Just bearing in mind you may accidentally move a few things. Can definitely go all the way, well, pretty much that much to the front, that to the side. So definitely some nice movement there. Are you going to get a 360 out of that? You will not, just because parts will start to collide within the joint. So I think the top of the leg will start colliding into the torso. Well, that's okay. Some of these little panels here on the upper thigh do move as well, but probably more for the transformation. So we've looked at the upper leg. Will there be any rotation in the leg? There will be some rotation up here in the upper thigh, which is cool. So that can pretty much move all the way around. Similar to the 360 motion there. Just be careful as you spin that around, especially in relation to this little thigh armor up here. So there's some nice spin up there. In terms of the knee bend, so you can go all the way back. Definitely can't go forward, unfortunately, just pretty much standard 90 back. But if you do raise the leg, that's pretty much what you get with the knee. You can also spin the leg around a little bit as well, which is pretty cool. I'm going to assume there's definitely no type of articulation in there. As for your foot, so the foot can pretty much go to the interior. So if you need to do some interesting off-center with the feet, you definitely can, to a degree, before it looks weird. There's no spin on that. Will you move forward and back? Not really. So it's only just really just that little bit of tilting on the upper ankle joint of sorts. So that pretty much is the articulation side of Rhinox on. So it's definitely not too bad. I think his arms will definitely be the big articulation winners here, especially given that, unlike some of the other Maximals, his actual upper arm will not be impeded by anything in his back, whether it's parts of his beast mode or his own shoulder armor getting in the way. So that's pretty cool. Unlike Cheetah, Tigertron, Air Razor suffered a bit of a similar fate because of her back kibbling. So overall, I would say, robot mode wise, Rhinox does show a lot of promise. I'm definitely quite happy with it, and I think dynamic posing should definitely be quite fun when the time comes. So now that we've had a look at the articulation and a bit of a look of Rhinox's robot mode, I will now try the fun 35-step conversion into his beast mode, and no doubt it won't be the top of his body that gives me the most grief. It'll be these two bits here, so it'll be interesting to see what my thoughts are going to be on how this goes. So hopefully it won't take too long, but we will see. And thankfully for everyone who's watching this, you just get to wait 1 or 2 seconds. I, on the other hand, could be at this for minutes, if not hours. And with Rhinox now in his beast mode. So before I go into the thoughts of the transformation, so here we have Rhinox in his beast mode, So here's a shot from the side, from the rear, the other side, front, bit of an angle, top down, and bottom up. So definitely not a bad looking beast mode. In fact, it's relatively quite solid. He can definitely stand on his own 4 feet with no issues. He does have a little bit of movement here in his lower jaw for his mouth, which is really cool. In fact, I've noticed it seems to be a bit of a running theme that a lot of the Maximals do have some of this little opening jaw type thing, which is always cool. In terms of his look, so obviously a lot of the green is now, for the most part, out of the way where possible. It's just replaced by that solid, maybe it is a grey, look of his exterior hide. We do see some of that pale colour as well on his toes for both his front and back legs. A nice red for his eye, and some of that, once again, that fleshy tone for his horns. He also does have some of this texturing on the outer shell, and in certain areas does have some blemishing on his skin. So detailing wise is actually quite nice. In fact, he also does have a bit of a little tail there. It doesn't move, but yes, the tail is there. So that's pretty cool. So definitely exterior wise looks pretty good. In fact, probably one of the better ones that tends to tuck everything away nicely. Speaking of tucked away, so on his underneath, his weapons will store quite nicely. Just in between his legs, there will be some pegs, ports to store that in between as well. I think it also helps keep some of that leg section fairly nice and together. In terms of articulation, so we've talked about the mouth. Head moves a little bit, but not too much. There will be a little bit of motion in the front legs, but to be honest, not a whole lot. So you can definitely swivel ever so slightly the legs. The back legs, pretty much a similar state, although because of how they're done, because there's a bit of a ball socket in there as well, they can collapse in a bit, but that's more of a artifact based on his transformation and not so much articulation for his beast mode. So the exception of his lower jaw, it's quite good. It does have some color in there as well. He definitely won't have much of an animated vibe about his beast mode. And as I said, he can definitely stand on his own 2 feet, not a problem. In terms of the transformation, it actually wasn't as bad as I thought. The upper body was pretty self-explanatory, pretty clear. The legs, and once again this is based on a very first round, they weren't too bad. It's definitely a case of, if you're going to use the manual, just go step by step and be careful about what you're doing. Some of it actually did feel a little bit intuitive after a while, so it actually wasn't as bad as I thought. So 35 steps actually wasn't bad. The only thing I would do a bit of a call out on is just when you're transforming, and I missed this, this section here which covers up this part of his rear section. Just make sure that when you're going from robot to beast mode, that you make sure this is folded out fully. What I had previously, I was trying to figure out, why is there this weird giant hole here? This gets folded inward and then tucked away for his robot mode, so I missed the step where I had to actually fold it back out so it would fill up this hole. But other than that, transformation actually wasn't too bad. I think there's been other transformations that have been a bit more frustrating than this. So overall, transformation, pretty solid. My hopes for some tabbing did pay off. So there's a good amount of tabbing, so there's a lot of tabbing here, there's some tabbing here as well, so everything does actually tab together relatively nicely. Obviously don't go pushing and prodding things with excessive force, he will detab things, but for the most part everything has actually neatly tabbed in this first time. You might have some tabbing frustrations around here as you tab things in. I think even this little panel here is probably a bit too far. Yeah, so obviously as I'm trying to fix that little front section, it's detabbing that bit, so just keep that in mind that it does end up tabbing nicely. Just make sure that everything's in the correct alignment, and I think these two sections here probably not as straight as they should be, but they do have little tabs into this panel here. So it's definitely very cool that a lot of stuff tabs there. Things don't feel overly loose and cumbersome, which is really, really good. So transformation, pretty good. Yeah, definitely, now that I've done it, it's definitely not as bad as I thought it would be. And Rhinox definitely does has a fairly sturdy beast mode. Be interesting if I can recreate a few scenes with the likes of Optimus Primal on his back. So Rhinox will put you there. Bring back your instruction manual for my final thoughts. So, what did I think of your robot mode? Aesthetic-wise, I thought it was really, really good. The colors are great, which is really good. It's very typical Rhinox. The articulation, playability is quite good. Definitely the major call out here will be the arms. Just having that free range of movement I think will be really good for pulling off some dynamic poses, and that's definitely a plus for some of the articulation for the head. The legs definitely weren't too bad articulation wise. It's not the strongest part of his robot mode, but they're definitely not terrible. And I think Rhinox being Rhinox can probably still pull off some very sturdy footwork poses here and there. It's a little disappointing that the feet themselves won't be able to assist a bit more with certain poses, so you will have to leverage off the hips and the knees to do what you need. I think my only grievance for anything robot mode related is his weapons. The front, so these front sections look great. Obviously they've been slimmed down a little bit for the purposes of this figure, as opposed to his original figure and his original depiction in the 90s. It's just unfortunate that the back bit where Rhinox holds them, that the body is so small. So for anyone who's seen original 90s Beast Wars, Rhinox had some very hefty guns, and they made no attempt to hide the size of the body of the weapon. So I think that's my unfortunate gripe with it. I think other figures of Rhinox have handled that better, but for this one, my main criticism for anything robot mode related will pretty much be the look of the weapons, and just some inhibition of some articulation here or there for whatever reason. Kibble is pretty minor on the B127 scale. It's pretty low. So that was the robot mode. So overall, I was quite happy with the robot mode. Beast mode wise, it's definitely very solid looking. Everything tabs in quite nicely. Colors are pretty good. Yes, you do have some of the green coming through, but that is to be expected. It's definitely not as bad as some of the other bots like Cheetor and Tigertron. And at least some of that green is a bit more hidden compared to some of the others. But yeah, I quite like Rhinox's beast mode. It's definitely very sturdy. Definitely a significant improvement over his original 90s. His other toy that was released years ago, I can't comment on that one. I know visually that was a very good looking one, but I'm trying to remember if I ever managed to get a copy. One of these days I'll have to go rummaging through the tubs, but that's definitely something for the future. So, any grievances of the beast mode? Would have been nice to have a little bit more articulation, but I don't think it's definitely not a be-all, end-all type thing. I do like how his weapons actually do store nicely into his transformation, and they didn't try to add any weird comedic value of putting those two weapons on top of his back, because that would have been silly. So I do appreciate those being there. So overall, his beast mode is definitely quite solid. The tabbing, as I mentioned before, definitely does help. So overall, would I recommend the Rhinox figure from the War for Cybertron Trilogy line? I would. I very much would. It's definitely a very solid figure, both in robot mode and beast mode. Colors are good. Articulation playability is definitely there. So if you're a huge fan of Rhinox, I would definitely say go for it if you can still find him, or you're willing to pay a bit more of an inflated price, given that he may not still be a mint in box. To flesh out the Maximal team, I would definitely say Rhinox a great addition to the team, and if you're going all the way back up to anything Beast Wars related, once again, he will be a solid addition to the collection. So overall, I'm actually quite happy with this incarnation of Rhinox. Definitely a huge improvement over his 90s figure, which doesn't take much. That is what happens after 30 odd years of engineering changes and developments, but that's to be expected. So overall, very solid figure. I'm very happy that he's finally out of the box. Definitely looking forward to see what type of things I can do with him in the shorts as well. That will release in parallel with this unboxing and review video. Thank you very much for watching this unboxing and review video of Voyager class Rhinox. Feel free to leave a like, a comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the content. All of this does help support the channel, and I do greatly appreciate it. Extra content can also be found on my Instagram account, same handle name as the YouTube channel. And as I mentioned only a mere moment ago, there will be some shorts and extra content both on Instagram and probably the community tab. And yes, this will definitely round up, I think, 6 out of 7 Maximals for the team short. So it's definitely building up in mass. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Dinobot will be the last of the Maximal team. He changed allegiances, so I'm going with that, irrespective of what happened in Kingdom. I think Kingdom was a bit more ambiguous. But yes, Dinobot will be the last Voyager to wrap up the team of 7. I do have 2 more Beast Wars centric videos to do after that, which will probably take us almost to the end of Feb. So probably by the end of February, I'll be back into the Transformers Bumblebee movie line to pick that up where I left it off. With all that being said, stay safe and take care, and I will catch you all in a future video, which will hopefully be Dinobot. Otherwise, might be another video somewhere on the channel.